As you know, the world as we experience it is much stranger than we usually consider it. In our common materialist view, we divide that the world is made of matter, of things, of space and time, both manifestations of matter in movement, in change. But in reality, of course, reality is made of stories. This is why all the great wise people in Daoism, but also in other cultures, they're actually storytellers and they are historians. And today we're going to talk about Baiyunguan. Baiyunguan is a Taoist monastery. I was recently in Beijing, and for the so manyest time I have been visiting Baiyunguan. I had no idea how often I came there. I came there actually to teach my kids how to enter a temple, how to enter a holy place. I've been with them to Christian places and Buddhist places. In the last few years, because of COVID and everything, I didn't have opportunity to go towards China, also because of the financial problems caused by asbestos in my clinic. But now I had the opportunity to take them there and to share with them some of the experiences of how it is to go into a holy place and what then of course makes this place holy. The first time I came to Baiyunguan was on the invitation of Wang Guangde, who is a former chairman anyway, of the Daoist Association in Wudangshan, and he invited me after having classes with him in Germany, and he told me to meet him in Germany, so in Baiyunguan, in the White Cloud Temple. So this is what I went to do. I collected all my courage, because I'm not a kind of person who likes to travel alone, certainly not in that time. And I went to see him. He wasn't accessible because he had cancer, and everybody was keeping on a distance. But since that time, I have been there to ask permission from the deities of Taoism and to understand more about Taoism, to travel through China to learn from Taoism and to learn from Taoist masters. And that has always worked for me. It also worked for me in other places to ask the local deities permission to enter that place so that they would protect me and help me, and that helped me in many ways more than I can explain, other than, well, it was amazing.
This is the main entrance gate towards the Baiyunguan. Baiyunguan was built in 741 under Emperor Xuanzong of the Tang Dynasty. In the Song Dynasty it was named Taiji Kong. And at the beginning of the Yuan Dynasty, Master Prechuangchen was appointed to this temple by Emperor Genghis Khan to preside over Taoism in China, upon which it was renamed Changchun Gong, Temple of Eternal Spring, after his death. After Prechuangchen's ascension to heaven, that happened, and then it was built, the Changchun Tang was built to enshrine his physical remains east of Changchun Gong. And in the early Ming Dynasty, the temple was ruined by war, and only Changchun Tang remained to become the center of rebuilding, and then it was called Baiyunguan. Since the founding of the People's Republic of China, the temple has undergone 3 extensive renovations with support of the government, and also the temple life has been revitalized as a result of that. Approximately, the temple buildings cover an area of 10,000 square meters, including 19 halls for gods, along the north-south axis, with a rear garden, which we will see later, and the overall area of the temple is about 60,000 square meters. Listed as a historic site under the protection of Chinese government in 2001, it houses the offices of the Chinese Daoist Association, and the Institute of Daoist Culture, and the Chinese Daoist Cultivation Editorial Department of the Journal of Chinese Daoism, in other words, the head office.
Baiyunguan, this time I planned to talk with the association about my translation work. I realized there that I should have made an appointment, which I didn't. But in exchange for that, I did collect some more information, and I came to the conclusion that it is high time I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the history of Baiyunguan, the White Cloud Monastery, and its history. And its history is much older than you think, because there's the dates of which is given, this is when it was being built, but there's a prehistory to the Baiyunguan, and this prehistory actually makes Baiyunguan an amazing place, and it is closely related to the daozang. and therefore with the way how Daoism interprets itself through its canon. Let's start with telling you a little bit about the Baiyunguan in the present time. Of course, in the present time it is part of the religious tourism within China. It is the seat of the Daoist Association of China, and it is also the university where a lot of Daoists go to study to get a state recognition as a priest or as a monk or anything like that. They have a bachelor master program, and when I was studying for a while in the Wudang Mountains with Shifu Yao Shuande, I realized my brother Chen Lisheng, he was studying there for his papers, and he took me there to study a bit so that I would have a little bit of a taste of the university. I wanted to do that as part of my PhD research, and there was a limit of 5 people a year from foreign countries. There were not so many Taoists there as students allowed anyway, so even for Chinese students there were only a few. And with these Chinese students also, it became very quickly clear to me that Westerners were not really welcome as students. So my opportunity to go study there was very small, and I probably wouldn't have had the finances to finance myself to live there for a long time, let go of my school and everything like that. But they also rejected me, and I was actually a little bit lucky because I think my Chinese was not sufficient to understand everything that they would tell me. Now I'm doing translation work and I have a much better understanding of what Daoism is all about, and I see that as my graduation plan. So a lot of the things that I'm doing in the last few years, they are basically rooted in this further study of Daoism and how to integrate it with the correct vision of Daoism and religion. And in the last few years I started working more about translation of ritual text, and for Wudang Mountains, to make sure that people can do their morning and evening prayer in English in the way how it's supposed to be done, and not just doing it in Chinese because we're not a Catholic church, and therefore Latin is not necessary, if you understand my drift. I'm maybe too much of a Lutheran there. But in general, you can say, okay, the stories that I make, therefore, on my channel, they are my experiences. They're based on my experiences, but they're also based on my learning process. Of course, I finished my PhD a long time ago, so the basic outline of what I'm doing, I'm also using in the Dongfang Dashui, in the IOC Daoland program, that you'll find a link below. So if you feel like coming to study, or if you just like to support this program and my translations as well as my videos, then of course any help is welcome. You can think of how to do that. I will send you a link. I will give you a link where you can sign up for my Patreon, or you can just come to the weekly classes. That will be the best support, because in these classes we discuss a lot of different kind of issues that are relevant within these studies. And I'm not going to ask you to become a Daoist. That is not my thing. That is just your own choice. I will help you with that if you need to. When I was trying to set myself up as a Daoist, I came to the answer from the Daoist Association in Beijing that if I do that, I have to do that completely independent. The rules and regulations of that in my country are not easy, because you have to be recognized as a religious organization and person, and I would get a Daoist passport and everything like that, and without that, actually, I can be an independent Daoist, and I don't really need that association. I don't really need anything from the Chinese government. And they also say if you become associated with us too close, you become automatically a part of the policies of the Chinese government. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you stay independent. So they outlined for me how to do that. If you happen to be Dutch or European and you would like to work with me to set it up, then that will be really great. One of the things that they advised me to avoid when I was trying to sign up and try to figure out how to do that, is that they said, we want to avoid to make the mistakes of the Confucian Institute. If you become part of the Confucius Institute, and I tried that too, together with the Wuhan Chinese Medicine and International University, and when you try to sign up with that, then you are going to be contracted about things that you can do, cannot do. And that is actually putting a severe limit on your abilities, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't do that, even though it had also some benefits, of course. So let's go dig a little bit into the history of the Baiyunguan. This is what is my main topic today, and this Baiyunguan has a long history. It is usually associated with the Daoist Qiu Chuji, and he was a Daoist who went to see Mongol leader Genghis Khan or Taizu, and he discussed with him the rules of engagement in conquering China. This year, when I was in the Baiyunguan, I noticed how incredibly crowded it is. Daoism at this moment is very popular, and in all my years there, it was never that busy. It was busy sometimes, but nowadays it's really a big thing, and a lot of people, they come there and they go pray and they go burn incense and so on and so on. I have my own routine to go through all kind of things, and as I said before, I was going to teach my children how to do that too, and also to let them understand a little bit more about the religion that they are born into. That's my religion, of course. Not that I'm really extremely religious, but as a Daoist, gods play a role in your self-cultivation process. So respecting gods, dealing with gods, communication with gods, greeting gods the least, and using gods to help others, this is a very important part. Communication with gods is never for yourself. Let me say that first. So at the moment when you do that, when you start asking for yourself, you are what is called the Daoist family, the daozang, and this is what you can call in Buddhism the Shangha, the community. When you look at the layout of the Baiyunguan temple, it is a north-south axis. When you come from the center of the city, from the, say, Gugong, the Forbidden Palace, you come from the Baiyun river side, and the back side of the monastery actually is facing the Baiyun and the Baiyunjiang, and as a result of that, the monastery is in the bend of the river. This is a very good feng shui, so this is a very important part. And it used to be in a valley, and there was a lot of emptiness around it. Nowadays, it's full of high rises, people living there, and it has had its best time, more backwards. There's more new buildings, they are looking better. There's also now a museum close by about the history of China, prehistory of China. Very beautiful museum, by the way. Then you have to go around the Baiyunguan, and you go in, and then you see these three axes. The central axis, these are the major temples, and on the right side from the entrance, you have the temples of the thunder god, Chengmu, and these temples are facing south, like the emperor actually does, and then there's the star god temple, and that is facing north. Then when you go on the left side, there's an axis, which the last temple is dedicated to Doma, and that Doma was today, that day that I was there was closed, so I have some images of that anyway. So, but Doma was closed, that's the goddess of time. Before that time period, you had also the temple of Lu Dongpin, the 8 immortals, and of the female goddesses who are mostly dedicated to, as a mother goddess, to things like fertility. So a lot of women, they go there, and men don't go there as much. But as a Taoist man, I think it is fitting to go there also to say thanks for being a son, for being a child. And maybe you have a family, to also say thanks for your family. So this is what is very important. But the female goddesses also, they face north, just like the normal people do. The emperor is allowed to face south, and the people, they face the emperor, or they face the north. This is the same division that you come across in self-cultivation. Which direction do you meditate? It depends a lot on the meditation. And so in some meditations you face south, others east, some north, some west. We're not going to go too deep into that today, because that doesn't make any sense. But new around the temple, and they started building this already some time ago, and they more or less finished the building of the new administration on the left side, where there are also now the rooms for the students, so there's more space for students, and it is also easier, I think, now as a Westerner to go study there as a result of that. On the right side used to be the old administration building. Now this is maybe used for something else, I didn't check that. But the place where's the kitchen and the restaurant where the monks are eating, that one place also has been restored, and some of the older monuments which are there also have been restored. So that was very nice to see, and as a result of that, the monks itself, they had retreated more to these kind of places, and the monastery was more left to the religious tourists. When you arrive at Baiyunguan, you first have a wall which has to keep out negative influences from the temple, so that the gate actually is separated from the temple. They have built an artificial entrance, and you have a square where some of the more important members they can park. There are some offices around it, and then you have the triple gate, which is the main gate of the monastery. And at the moment when you go through this main gate, usually only the middle gate is open. Then you come across a bridge. That bridge is basically the actual entrance into the monastery, because at that moment you take the religious path, so you enter there into a holy realm in the Dao land. Now you know where my company name is based upon. It's based on the Dao land, the country where the Dao rules. For tourism's sake, they have hung some bells under the bridge, so people go on the side, and if you throw a coin, you can buy the coins there. You have to hit the bell inside the coin that's hanging as a big coin with the bell, and at the moment when you hit that bell, then at that moment you're supposed to have luck. I have done something like this in Wudangshan. The first coin I threw, I hit the bell, so I was very happy. I've seen many people over the years try, and they usually take a lot of coins. And of course, if you throw long enough, eventually you will hit the mark. As when you let the monkey type, eventually you will write a Shakespeare piece. The first altar that you see is the one of a protection deity, and that one you have to ask permission to enter. So you are already in Daoland, but then you come across the guardian. It's a former demon dedicating himself to protecting Daoism. And it is for every temple the same. You have on the left side and the right side, you have the dragon and the tiger gods, and they protect you. In Buddhist temples, these are 4, and these are all former demons, and these former demons, they have dedicated themselves to the protection of the Holy Lands. When you go further, you come across a range of different temples, and the lecture hall is there. There's on the left and the right side of the central axis, there are the temple for Tai, and there's also the temple to Huatou, Sun Simiao, and Hegong, I think, if I remember well. And these 3 are important because you are to worship those and to pray for those, because these are the ones that are allowing you to cultivate and to achieve things, because they are the teachers of knowledge, of magical writing. I will talk about it in another video, and about medicine, of course, and that is all really very important. When you go through there, you have the Qiu Chuji hall, and in the Qiu Chuji hall, this is telling the story of how he went towards Taizu, and as a result of that, Taizu changed his way of conquest of China. The motivation that Chu gave Taizu is very simply that he can conquer China, but he should not be addicted to murdering and killing people. At the moment when you are addicted to murdering and killing people, then you will automatically build resentment, and as a result of that, your conquest is not going to be accepted. You know the story, you see it happen all the time. You see this in Eastern Europe, where Ukraine is being invaded. You see this in Yemen. You see this in African countries. You see many countries where people are conquering, and they do this in a bloody way, whether it's through revolution or through conquest of a neighbor. It doesn't really matter. As soon as it becomes bloody, you know that it's not going to have a happy end. So this was basically his wisdom. And as a result of that, he changed his way, because he had faith in what Chu was telling him. And he came there eventually about 4 or 5 times, and every time again he was seen there as a teacher, and Taizu, as a result of that, ordered his men to adapt their way of conquest, and as a result of that, they actually managed to keep the country at peace for a while, not too long, before the Ming dynasty actually came up. Talking about these teachings, Qiu also made clear to Taizu that when you want to rule a country, or if you want to rule your life in general, you have to make sure that you are respecting heaven. That's the one thing. So when you go into the Dao land, you are supposed to respect heaven. My building the Dao land is my respect towards heaven. You have to love the people. And I don't know what you do with your respect to heaven, but I'm assuming that when you watch these things, you are interested in how to care for other people, one way or the other. You have maybe a big heart, maybe you feel hurt, maybe you don't feel comfortable around people because they don't understand you. It doesn't all really matter, because all these things are being cleaned up according to Daoist teachings. When you open your heart and start caring for people more than you care about yourself. That's different with Confucianism, because there they say you should love people, but you should not take from yourself to give to others. While in Daoism they say, like especially in Wudang means basically disciplinary service, doing disciplinary service. So you serve other people, and that means loving people. Then as a result of that, you also have to have a clear mind. That means that your mind should be unmoved by your worries and your troubles. That means, like Lao Tzu says, you have to make sure that your life is simple so that you do not have to worry about things. And it means also you have to have trust in reality. It's not like with all these people that say like, oh, if you have trust then everything will come to you that you need, but because that's not the case. As soon as you are busy with spiritual things, you are attracting darkness. And you have to overcome that darkness. That's the story of the Buddha, that's the story of the Lao Tzu, that's the story of many other Daoists, that's the story of Christ, that's the story of Mohammed. All these grand religious figures, they all attracted problems because it strengthens their will to care for other people. Then the last part, you should be free from desire, and that is usually where it goes wrong, because if you're not free of your desires, you are going to attract more darkness than you can handle. That's basically it. So this is one of the core things that Taoism tries to teach, and a temple is also a reflection of these things. The deities are a reflection of these things. Your striving for immortality also is rooted in that same principle. Behind the Qiu Hall there is the main temple. This is actually the reason why people go there. And there is a ground hall, base floor, and it has the gods of the four directions there. And we have to go into that another time also to explain a little bit more about that, because it's quite significant. And on top of that, there are the three main, what you can say, creator gods, which relate to the knowledge of the universe, to your relationship with the universe, and also with the morality of your actions. And these are also the foundations of the universe as a whole. And that means that your story changes from being fated or deterministic towards destined by your own actions because of adhering to these three qualities. In essence, this temple, as well as all the other ones, the smaller ones, they are all manifestations of the content of Taoism. Temples all over China, they are like that. Some of them also have holy grottos inside where immortals collect. Like for instance, when you go to Wuhan and you go to Wudangshan, there is behind the temple, there is a small grotto in a wall where the fairies collect. These places usually are ignored by tourists, so they don't know it. And if you are there and you are praying there in front, they consider that strange. But Daoists, when they see you do that, they usually nod and smile, because normally when you go to a temple, there is a monk there, and every time when somebody bows to a god, they ring the bell for every bow that you take. And that is at least the idea. Of course, because of so many tourists, they check who they do that for. Some are more active with it than others. So your radiation of respect actually invites the monk to do so. Qiu, as you might know, is the founder of Longmen Daoism. Longmen Daoism is at this moment the largest branch of the monastic brand of Daoism. monastic Daoism is to a large degree influenced by, for instance, Tiantai Buddhism and Zen, also Chan. And at the moment, when people are studying in this kind of Taoism, they are taking some aspects with them. They have thoughts about Buddha as being a special brand of immortal, so they don't respect it as highly as in Buddhism itself, but they do see them as important. They also see Christ and Mohammed as important. They do not make that discernment between them. But as Longmen Taoism is concerned, it is part of 8 groups of monastic Taoism, and these 8 groups are all led by one of the disciples of Wang Chongyang. And Wang Chongyang was the founder of the monastic Taoism, and he deserves his own story, but Wang Chongyang was very much attracted by the teachings of Tao and had a big influence on his students, of course, and when he died, Qiu Chuji retreated in Longmen. That is why his brand of Taoism, as a disciple, he perfected himself, became the leader of that particular brand of Taoism. He was called towards the court in Beijing, and he was fulfilling some duties there at that moment. And at the moment when he died, he heard there was some disaster in the mountains around, thunder and so on, and he wrote a poem. Let me read that poem to you. It is very interesting. I translated it. I have not put it in the same kind of rhyme like he did, but I think it is clear what he's talking about.
Life and death are like twilight events, and the illusion of water is always idle. The black rabbit jumps everywhere in the dim light, and when the mysterious quality is opened, it takes the seas and the mountains. The 8 rats are swayed as if close at hand, and everything is as if it is a mechanism. Crazy.
Crazy!
The words just turn to dust, left in the minds of the people of the times.
Isn't it beautiful? It's about his own history. I talked, of course, about the recognition of Taoism, that poetry is the root, and art actually is the root of understanding the world. And all the famous Daoists, especially in Zhongshan Daoism, they wrote poems. Zhang Sanfen did, Lu Dongbin did, Qiu Chuji did, Wang Chongyang did. They all did that. Originally, there was a small temple in the palace ground at what now is Gugong. In this palace, this small temple was called Baiyun. It was just an altar, nothing much, and it was the seat where Taoism did their work from, White Cloud. When Qiu had died, his disciple decided, in memory of his teacher, master, to dedicate a temple towards him, and the emperor agreed, and he offered a plot of land near the Baiyun River to build that temple for him. And that temple, you can read about it in my translation of the textbook on the history of Baiyunguan that I used to create this story. This temple gradually was built over a period of about 40 years, and it was dependent on support and donations by a lot of different Daoists. And because Qiu was very famous and well respected, a lot of people, they came to help, and over time the monastery was completed. There's more happening after that, but what is most important about this monastery is not so much that it was built over such a long time, that it is dedicated to this particular person, because there was already an altar in this place, but not as important. The importance is that what the whole lineage of Qiu, Longmen, Wang, and their predecessors have to deal with is also the formation of the daozang. Over time, there have been many attempts to collect Daoist scriptures. The Jin dynasty knew one, the Song Dynasty had a version, but the final one that we are now still using is the one of the Ming Dynasty. I'm translating material from the compendium to the daozang. That's a textbook written by the compiler of the daozang, and he wrote his own commentary as a sort of summary, and I think everybody interested in Taoism in the West should at least read that one, because the daozang really is too much. There's a translation project about it, and I haven't seen much movement in there for a long time, because Taoist scriptures are really very complicated and they are disorganized. As you can see in the early work from Komjati, who gave an overview of the daozang. Also Christopher Schipper and also Verellen, they all talk about all these different kind of things, and they make selections and they translate something. They try to be as good as possible in the translation. But I think for us as Daoists, to be as good as possible within translation is one thing. To be clear in what Taoism is about is most important, without becoming a populist. Yeah, because we know many populists in the market. They make a lot of money, but you know, their truth is usually far besides reality, and that's a pity. The integrity of Taoism as a thought system and the way how we received it and how we developed it as a Western thing, of course, is very important with that. And a temple like Baiyunguan is a nice example. So I have set myself as a goal eventually to build something like that. But of course, I need a lot of funds for that, because it will definitely cost millions. You need a good plot, you need a design, you need architects. I have all the contacts in China to help me design it and so on to make it good. The deities, the statues have to be built, a library has to be built, although the daozang I already have, so that should not be too difficult. But it is a huge project, and it has to be a teaching device. Every temple where you go to is a teaching device. The Catholic churches, they are teaching devices. Once the Protestants took all the statues out, the interpretation of the priest became much more important, or your personal interpretation became more important, you can say, or like also in Islam, which is the predecessor of Protestantism. Also there, your personal relationship with the divine is very important, and the personal relationship with the divine is your story with the divine, your story with the stories, and your personal development as a result of that. And this is what I meant when I started by saying reality is often made out of matter, of space, time, and so on. But the reality is that it is made up of stories. I hope this story is interesting to you, that you feel like this contributes to something to you. You would help me very much by liking and subscribing to the channel. You also would help me greatly if you are willing to support this project. That would be really great. I have been studying how to do this for a long time, but I'm really now ready to accept more support and maybe also involve you in the project. That would be really great. Thank you.